Continuing our popular Ireland on the Fly Masterclass series, this July we're delighted to be joined by Peter Driver of Piscari-Fly, who will be giving a masterclass on the dry dropper technique for river brown trout.
At the height of the summer, there's no better way to target river trout than with the deadly combination of dry fly and nymph underneath. Whether they're taking on top or subsurface, Peter Driver will be giving invaluable tips and advice.
For river trout anglers, this will be a must-see webinar on Thursday, the 25th of July.
Tickets cost €10 and go to www.irelandonthefly.com/masterclass to register today. Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. For this week's episode, we're focusing on salmon and the recent decision in Norway to close 33 of the country's most prolific rivers in the southwest, including the Gaula and Orkla, which will remain in place until the stocks show sufficient recovery, although it is now going to be until the season's end, as you'll hear. It was a decision that caught many unawares, including anglers who were on their way out to Norway, and one such angler was Johnny Casey, who we spoke to before in the podcast about his love of salmon fishing and the next generation of the sport in Ireland. Johnny tells us of his shock at the news from Norway, how they had to scramble to make last-minute changes of plan, and what local anglers are saying over there about the decision and what it might mean for the wider salmon angling community.
16 of the 33 rivers are going to remain closed for the rest of the season, mostly based around Trondelag. Best description I can give it to you guys is Trondelag is like a state. So if you can imagine Munster, Ulster, Connacht and Leinster, Trondelag is one state. Then you've got Nordland up above it. Then you've got Finnmark above. So you might hear the famous rivers in Finnmark, the Laxelva and the Alta. In below that in the Nordland, you've got the likes of the Bjerelva, those kind of things. But Trondelag is really where the travelling anglers go to. So that's where you've got the likes of the Namsen, the Gaula, the Orkla, the Stjordal, to name a few. So these are probably some of the most famous rivers. Anyone that salmon fishes around the world knows about the Gaula and the Orkla and the Namsen in particular. So
have you been going over there the last few years? Like, have you been fishing there?
We have, yeah. We were on the Gaula there for the last few years, guys. And I think it's when you're over there and you see it, you really see like how much salmon fishing means to these areas. Like the population of Norway is only 5.5 million. Like that's around the same as the population of Ireland, but the country is enormous. So it's extremely rural, it's extremely isolated in parts, and all that they have in these places from a tourism perspective, outside of kind of say hiking and that sort of recreational activity, is salmon fishing. And, particular fly fishing for salmon over there is taken hugely importantly. But yeah, if I was a lodge owner, a guide, local restaurant owner, I'd be extremely, extremely concerned for the future. Extremely concerned, because as it stands, as of today and as of the 23rd of June, when we flew in, we arrived on the 23rd and they closed it on the 23rd. Salmon fishing is officially closed for the season.
So had the season started?
The season starts up there, so it's a shorter season there. In some rivers in the north, it generally starts around the 15th of June, and in Trondelag in the south of Norway, it starts about the 1st. So it runs from the 1st to the end of August. Some go into September, but that's just for sea trout. But generally, the season's pretty small. It's just from the 1st of June to the end of August.
I'm shocked. I didn't know that. It's a really short season, Tom.
Really short season, Tom. Really short season. And wow. You know that from like Connemara, Tom, and the same with yourselves. And it's in a tourism area, and I'm from the West Clare here, in very much a tourist hotspot.
Yeah.
June, July, and August are where you make your money. You know what I mean? It's a very, very condensed season, and it makes it even worse that it's now closed. The salmon fishing is now closed because they were basically open for 2 to 3 weeks, and that's it.
It was it caught everybody unawares. Like you arrived into Norway to fish. Which river was it you were fishing?
We were on the Gaula and the Orkla.
Yeah. So you'd arrived, you paid for your accommodation, for your fishing, your license, all the rest. You arrive in, and next minute, tell us where you were told, when you were told. Tell us how it happened.
So we arrived, we flew into Oslo first. And when we were in Oslo, guys, there was a group of about, I'd say maybe 20 anglers. It's kind of the same. You meet the same groups in the airport at the same weeks. We were over there in week 26, which is considered the best week of the year for kind of the big fish. The big fish arrive in numbers. So yeah, it was about 20 anglers in Oslo, and it was actually Gareth. Gareth was on the Orkla the week before, and Gareth was over there with a group of people. And he texts Yamil and he said, look, Yamil, I don't know where you guys are, but I wouldn't go traveling too much further north. And we were kind of going, what's he on about? And there was kind of rumblings about like basically that they were closing the rivers. Now, this was literally a split-second decision. Like this was a Friday at 6 o'clock on a Friday. And we started, so we rang the lodge owner that we were staying at in Nedra Loberg, and they said they've literally just gotten off the phone with the other, they call them landowners over there, or farmers. It's not really clubs that own the rivers, it's more farmers that own the rights, the riparian rights. And they've just been told that essentially from midnight on Saturday the river was to be closed. And there was a review to be carried out on the 5th of July, which has just passed, on the Gaula, and the Gaula River Board, who we'll say represent the whole river, they recommended to the Norwegian Environmental Agency that the river remains closed for the rest of the year.
How does it work, like in the sense of, had you paid your deposit?
Paid everything. Now, we were quite lucky there up front. We were quite lucky in that, well, not lucky, we still lost out on a good bit of money, but the place that we're staying at, Eric and Lynn run it. They're quite young. They're only our age. They only just established the place last year, so we fished it for the first time last year with them. So we're not paying huge sums here. You know, you're talking kind of roughly about €800 for a week's fishing, or kind of 8 days fishing and 8 days accommodation. So not huge amounts. But saying that, a lot of the guys over there were staying with the likes of like the Gaula Fly Fishing Lodge, who own a number of beats on the river. And like those guys are paying $3 or $4 grand each a week just for fishing rights. And then on top of that, if you're staying in the lodge, you can be paying another couple of grand. So it's very much has been down to the individual lodge owners, beat owners, landowners, whether or not they're being refunded or offered weeks next year or vice versa. But we know guys that paid $3 or $4 grand, got in a plane in Oslo, got in a plane and just came straight home.
Oh, wow.
Tell me this, were the lodges then that you had heard, were they offering reimbursement or another week, or what was it?
So what we got offered, we've been offered essentially the same week for next year for free fishing. Yeah, for free fishing. Now, the problem is, Dara, and I suppose this is what a huge amount of anglers are going to say, and a huge amount of travelling anglers, are you going to take the risk of booking flights and booking accommodation if next year they can just suddenly snap their fingers and go, lads, the rivers are closed again?
Right. Can I ask one thing there, Johnny? Why were they closed? On what knowledge?
So how it works over there, there's two ways. The main way they base it on is catch statistics. So it's slightly different to Ireland in that most of the rivers don't have counters on them. So right. the first way that they do it is based on catch statistics, right? The catch statistics were way down. Last year was the worst year on record, and this year has been just a total and utter collapse again. So based on catch statistics, the Gaula in particular had just fallen off a cliff. So that was one thing. What they also do is they net the fjord. They have research nets that they net the fjord, and based on that, I'm not quite sure what equation they use or what kind of a formula they use, but based on whatever comes through the research nets, they also base whether or not a river remains open on that. Now the Gaula and the Orkla had kind of taken preemptive measures. They knew that this season was not going well. And I suppose something to point out, guys, is there's 3 really bad things that happened this year. The first thing is the snowmelt was one of the poorest it's been in years. So the rivers are fed from snowmelt in a lot of places. The second was there was a really early spring, and the third was very high temperatures very early. Again, we were in the Arctic. We drove from the Gaula and the Orkla to the Arctic, and it was 31 degrees in the Arctic Circle when we were there. So that kind of gives you, people talk about climate change and global warming and that. When you're in the Arctic Circle and it's 31 degrees, you're really kind of going, okay, something's not quite right here. But that's basically it, Tom. Catch statistics and research nets in the fjords are how most of them have based their decisions.
And I know when the Norwegian government came out and announced it, they were kind of pointing the finger mainly at climate change, really, weren't they? But what are anglers over there like? Okay, like I'm interested.
The main backlash so far, Tom, and Dara, I know you've covered this extensively on the last salmon podcast. The main backlash so far has obviously been towards Maui and the fish farms. There was also, guys, a huge escape early in the season in Trondheimsfjord. So there's an app called Elva Guide, and it's River Guide in Norwegian, and you upload your catches on that. The amount of farmed salmon that we saw caught in the rivers was unbelievable. Like you're talking about like 40% of all fish caught were farmed salmon.
When was this, Johnny?
This was when we were there, Tom. When we were there, you can see it. You can see it like by the hour. You can see catches being uploaded, and you're just looking at this, going, "That's a farm salmon. That's a farm salmon. That's a farm," and not small fish.
When was that Trondheim escape, Johnny?
That was at the very start of the season. So the Orkla, Gaula, and Fjordal were all affected by it at the very start. So that would have been kind of the end of May, start of June. Yeah, quite a big escape, Tom, with like a couple of thousand.
Like, it's amazing actually, because like I said, we covered the Icelandic escape, which was back in, I think, September, October, and like 1% of the Icelandic population came out to protest about what was happening. Like, it's just insane. So even though the Norwegian government's kind of pointing the finger blame at climate change and what's happening in the oceans, are local landowners and local anglers going?
Yeah. Every single person that we spoke to, Dara, every single person that we spoke to said fish farms, fish farms, fish farms. Now, look, an important thing, it's important to give a bit of context here as well. The Norwegian culture is a hunter-gatherer culture and has been for centuries, right? They have a culture of killing fish and killing big fish. It's something that we probably don't understand as much in Ireland. It's just been part of their lives. They've been hunters for generations upon generations. That probably has not helped the situation. It definitely hasn't helped the situation. But when you see the extent of the fish farms over there, like, they are everywhere. They are everywhere. Like, Maui have such lobbying power over there. You're dealing with a multi-billion euro corporation against farmers, really, essentially farmers and local anglers and guides. So they're very much, they cannot understand why this decision has been taken against them, whereas there's been no attempt by the Norwegian government to take any measures against what's happening on the fish farm side of things.
So it's very much the anglers feel like they're the ones. Yeah.
Well, it is.
Exactly.
Well, it is.
It is, exactly. It is, Tom. Yeah. Exactly. They're the ones, like, these are the ones at the forefront of it. These are the ones losing out.
And also, like you said, the local economy, like the landowners, the farmers, they're the ones, the tourism, it's all that side, that knock-on effect. Have you seen any figures in terms of what they reckon it could affect in terms of the economy? Like,
when you see the amount of travelling anglers over there, it's hard to fathom. We don't quite get the same amount of anglers in Ireland. The Moy might get some, and then definitely Carib Mask. But like, when you see the amount of anglers on the river over there, like the Gaula could have hundreds upon hundreds of anglers on it, and I would say 50% of them have come from abroad. So they're all there. They're spending money. It's completely catastrophic. Like, to give you an example, guys, the lodge that we're staying at, Nedra Loberg, they built a brand new, like, standalone lodge last year. It costs €10,000 a week to rent it. Right now, it fits 10 people very easily, but it's huge. They've put their life savings into it. It's their second year running this place. They put their life savings into it, and now their sole ability to make money has been taken away from them.
Like I said, the Icelandic people came out and protested. Are the Norwegians a lot more kind of complicit, or just
very much from? And look, don't get me wrong. This is something that we were kind of over there going, like, lads, why aren't you out in the streets? Why aren't you banging down the doors of local politicians going, this is ridiculous, this is our livelihoods, you can't do this? They're very much, this is just our own reflections, my reflections, and a couple of the guys, they seem to be just kind of saying, well, look, if that's what the government think is best to do, then that's what's best to do. That was very much the underlying feeling that I got from a lot of them,
And I noticed as well in the government's press release, they said, or quotes I read was basically saying, well, you can't really blame salmon farming because look at the Baltic, look at Sweden, which has terrible numbers and has, pretty much no salmon farming.
But look on a map, like they're looking on a map, where do those Baltic salmon have to go past? You know what I mean? They can't cut through a canal via Norway to the northern feeding waters. All those salmon are coming around up by Denmark and up the Norwegian coast.
Yeah. And also the Baltic is very polluted as well, as the people are pointing out.
Exactly.
It probably has its own problems. But what I wanted to ask you there, Johnny, where you stayed in Norway, was it close to any of the salmon farming operations? And if so, were there locals there who worked in them?
There would, of course, yeah. Especially, so where we stayed initially, we were in a place called Lundamo, so we were about kind of 20 minutes from Trondheim, right? So Trondheim is a massive fjord. If you can picture the fjords from Vikings or whatever, Trondheim is a massive fjord, right? And basically all along these fjords in Norway are dotted the cages, similar to Connemara, similar to Bantry, similar situation. And then as you get further up north, like Trondheim is like a city, so it's populated, and the area around it will be populated. But we took the decision when we were over there. We said, look, we have to try and salvage something here. So we drove to the Arctic Circle. We got in this tiny little van and we drove for nearly 14 hours up north to a place called Bierelva, which, like, I think actually Conor Arnold is there at the moment, and there's a couple of other Irish guys that have fished before. So luckily we were shown that place by a couple of guys, and it was worth it. But up there, guys, there is nothing. There is, like, you're in the far north, there is nothing. And that's, Tom, when you see, and similar to what happened with, you know, the Icelandic government and these places, they come in and they promise jobs, they promise economic prosperity, they promise wealth to an area. And a lot of the people that would work on those salmon farms, like, they would probably fish themselves, but they've no other economic opportunity there, you know. Like they're like Maui, or again, they pump millions into propaganda, into PR consultancies, you know, into everything. Like, they know what they're doing when they come into an area, you know. So, like, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Fair play to you though, Johnny. Like you said, you didn't give up the ghost. You decided to do something about it.
We did, yeah. Look, we had to, I won't lie to you, I was actually going to get in the plane and come home, because I was just kind of over there. It's been a disaster of a spring season here for us here as well. Like, most of my friends have just, the spring fishing was non-existent this year. But we just said, look, we'll stick it out. So yeah, we went up to the Arctic, up to the Bierelva, gorgeous, absolutely stunning parts of the world, and gave it a go there for a few days. But as I said, we ran into some problems up there in that it was 30 degrees, and that's a glacial, so it's fed off a glacier. So the glacier went into melt, and I've never been at a place where the sun has caused the river to go into flood, but unfortunately that happened when we were there. So, but no, we had a bit of success. Like, Yamian broke off into a very, very, very large fish. It actually broke the T-tip on him, and we lost a couple of other fish. So it was a bit of crack.
That's phenomenal. 30 degrees inside the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Absolutely. Like I have a video of one of the lads inside the river with a cigar and a can of beer in his jocks, which is pretty funny.
My God. And what was the run like? And had you heard from locals? Like, what was the run like for that river?
Really bad. So yeah, it's down in the Bierelva, it's down 55% on last year, which was the worst year on record. So yeah.
So basically, so you salvaged it in one way, in the sense of you got a week's fishing, but still no fish. So you could have stayed in Ireland.
Yeah. Well, some of the lads actually that got in the plane and flew back from Oslo, they were sending us photos of fish from the shore that week.
Expensive week's fishing for you.
Exactly.
I want to ask you, Johnny, just, we mentioned there earlier about obviously, look, different factors: fish farming, climate change. The third one, which we've only just touched on, is the culture that, you know, the hunter-gatherer, you know, keeping the fish. There's a stat there I just want to pull up, and it's actually, I don't know if you read it. It's a really good blog post by Matt Hayes talking about the Gaula. I don't know if you saw that.
And Matt's been really, really at the forefront. He obviously runs a pretty big lodge over there, a very famous lodge. And I think Matt's been at the forefront of trying to change that culture, of trying to bring in, like, guys, you don't have to kill all the fish, or the big fish, you know what I mean? You can release fish, you know, sort of a thing.
And he was actually writing, because it was just I saw a link to his post, and then I was digging into it. And like, he was writing about this last autumn, I think it was, basically saying how the changes that they brought on board for the Gaula in terms of the management of the river were going to cause the closure of the river. Like, he was writing about this like nearly a year ago. Like, and like he was saying, he says, I'm not taking any pleasure in saying, you know, I saw what was going to happen. There's a stat here I came across. More than 51,000 out of the 70,000 rod caught Atlantic salmon in Norway were killed. 51,000 of the 70,000 were killed.
Like, Dara, it's hard to describe until you're over there. Like, they kill pretty much everything. And these aren't small fish. Like, these are like 30-pound fish. It's nothing for them to knock a 30-pound fish in the head. Like, absolutely nothing. They don't think twice about it. So I think in some senses that's probably the chickens coming home to roost. And like, you know, it's probably a big wake-up call for them. Do you want to hear something crazy? So there's a law in Norway, right? They explained this to us over there, because we just said, why don't they just go catch and release?
Yeah.
Like, why are they closing the river? Can they not just go catch and release? So there's a law in the Norwegian statute book that basically says, if you cannot just fish for a fish to release it, it amounts to animal cruelty. So there has to be a certain level, or on every single river, there has to be a quota of fish to kill. You can't just have full catch and release on a river. And that's in the Norwegian statute book.
So even if you were a landowner, you owned the fishery rights for this section of a river, you were enlightened, you wanted to introduce 100% catch and release, according to the Norwegian statute, you can't do that.
In your section, you might be able to get away with it. There's probably a bit of a grey there, but the river as a whole has to have essentially a certain quota of fish that can be killed. And it's just something there, like, and it's like, guys, like, you see it on, like, the likes of the Moy, like, I don't know, you get the catch reports from the Moy through the East Mayo guys, and, like, there was a couple of weeks there at the start of the season where you were seeing, like, similar, not nowhere near the numbers like that there, but similar enough to, like, 70% of springers being killed. And, like, we're now seeing the effects of this going down the line in Norway. The same is going to happen in Ireland if we don't. Like, it's a cultural change. It's a huge cultural change, but the same thing is going to happen in Ireland. If you're killing springfish, they're the best of the best. They're the multi-sea winter fish. They're the genetics you want in the river, you know? So,
and look, it's, I do actually want to tease that out a bit, Jenny, because you have the Atlantic Salmon Trust, call it the gift. We mentioned this last week, Tom, about give the fish back to the river. Salmon Watch Ireland have come out reminding people, asking people, please practice catch and release. They're too precious. But Tom, we've spoken about this before, that we think if you did introduce 100% mandatory catch and release on rivers, there'd be a massive backlash. People would go nuts about it, like.
They would go nuts.
Leaving aside the crisis that's happening in the salmon, right? I had a very interesting chat with when I was over in Italy with the Slovenian guy, Rock, that I know, and he was telling me in Slovenia. And this is nothing to do with the crisis. This is just catch and release now. Let's say I'm thinking of trout here now. And the only way they can combat the antis who want to stop fishing, and I was surprised to hear this, but in Slovenia, there's obviously a movement there, is by saying that to justify the fishing is that they're keeping the odd fish. Because if you fish solely just to put the fish back, how can you justify it to somebody who doesn't fish?
That's similar to Norwegian law. Like, they say that
it does. But you see, if somebody who doesn't fish at all doesn't understand the joy that we get from it and everything, and they say, okay, so you just go out and you purposely inflict pain. Do fish feel pain? That's a series of podcasts, okay? But this is, right? But I'm just saying here, I was very interested to hear when Rock said this to me. Yeah, he said, the people say, so you're just doing one thing solely to inflict pain on a fish, and entirely for your own gratification, and then you walk away. So what is the purpose of that?
It comes back to, and I know we've spoken about it, Tom, like, we wouldn't be surprised if they tried to ban fishing in next 50 years, like, from that kind of, cruelty perspective or whatever.
I do think, right, like, it was interesting enough, I was actually chatting to Jason Nash recently about this as well, and he's very much on the side that, like, exactly as you said, you can't have 100% catch and release across all the rivers. It just won't work. And I actually, whilst it annoys me, I agree. I do think that, like, if a fish, especially an anadromous fish that migrates, can make it back to the river, and you catch that fish, look, for me, I'd try and put them back now, and look, I used to take a few fish. I no problem saying that, but look, the way I kind of look at it now, I'm like, look, just put them back and let them off. But maybe something there, I think that, like, the way we should look at it is maybe catch and release until June, and then, like, do we really need 10 tags for the year? Does every angler need 10 tags? Probably not. You know what I mean, or something like that. So look, as Tom said, at the end of the day, people want to keep fish. People want to eat fish. It's why we started fishing for them in the first place. So, like, people are still entitled to do that, as long as it's just done, I think, in a probably safer way than it's done at the moment.
And also as well, and I just gave that example there, but I preempted that at the start by saying at the moment there's a bit of a crisis going on, right? So I think you have to sort of sit back and think, well, okay, well, maybe we just ease back in it now and bring in, as you say, something like that until the spring runs return or whatever, or something. But I think what some people are afraid of is, if it's 100% catch and release, if they bring it in now, that will be it forever, I
think you are right, Tom. Like, and Johnny, is that, if you do just bring this is black and white. It's not black and white for people.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Johnny. A lot of it is cultural, and if you can, engage people, and I hope it's generational as well, in the sense that the younger generation are kind of more enlightened.
Something that's important, guys, as well, is like, while we're on a fly fishing podcast here, you have to take into account that there's people who catch salmon and trout and everything that don't fly fish and never want to fly fish. And you can't ignore their voice either. If people want to use a prawn or a worm or a spinner, like, at the end of the day, like, who are you to say, no, you shouldn't be doing that, and you have to listen to their voice as well. You can't just push them out of the conversation. So
yeah, it's a good point.
You're right, Johnny. They're anglers as well. I've always said that, and this holier than thou attitude, which some fly anglers have, not all. Some fly anglers, I don't think there's room for that. We're all anglers.
No, I agree.
I do think as well, like, this is the time maybe when it's crisis point, when numbers have dropped off, that they should be introducing measures to say, catch and release up until June or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's, now I know the opposition will come out and say, well, that's just the start of it. They're going to say, well,
So something that they do in Norway, guys, is they do a thing called a mid-season evaluation on the 1st of July. Like, so maybe in Ireland you could do something similar whereby you bring in something that on the 1st of July you say, okay, look, it's been an absolutely terrible spring run. There hasn't been a great grills run. We need to implement catch and release for the rest of the year. You know what I mean? Something along those lines, rather than kind of maybe a blanket, it's just open for the season thing. Something along those lines, maybe some form of evaluation, mid-season or further into the season.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Johnny. I think something like that is what you need, and something that would work. Where it's sort of proactive rather than reactive. Yep.
The problem I have as well, though, with the science, don't have a problem with science. The problem I have with scientists is the sense of they're too black and white as well. It has to be X on the graph before it can become Y. Whereas this is a subtle issue of different shades of grey. Like you said, Johnny, have a mid-season evaluation. Whereas I get the sense at the moment it's, well, we've monitored, these are the numbers of harvestable fish for the river's open, and that's it. Well, actually, no, maybe, like you said, Johnny, you do need to reevaluate as you're going along.
Exactly.
So that's my concern about it.
Yeah. No, completely agree.
Well, definitely, the one thing I think is when it's in crisis like that, you just can't sit back as anglers and do nothing.
Yeah, 100%.
Hold your head in the sand.
I kind of like, there was kind of mentions of it last year, but like, I feel like there needs to be some form of a lobbying group, an all Ireland lobbying group that encompasses all anglers, not just fly anglers, but like lads who want to spin, lads who want to use a worm, a prawn, anything. Because at the moment, it's so fractured. You see it online, it's so fractured, and it's almost like infighting everywhere. It's not going to get us anywhere. It's.
I'm totally behind you, but it's like anything that starts up and it was your own.
It's impossible. I know. It's how do you do it?
Your own. Dara's granddad, it was Brendan Behan, Dara's relation, said the first item on any new Irish organisation, the first item on the meeting is the split.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do need something like that. We
but
really
just
do.
Some forum maybe, because at the moment, like, you've got the likes of, like, the Atlantic Salmon Fund and NASCO and like Salmon Watch Ireland and that, and like they're all doing fantastic work individually, but do they really represent anglers on the rivers, on on the beats anglers? Like, probably not to a degree. They probably seem like a faraway organization that are kind of rooted on scientific research more so than representing actual anglers on the river, if that makes sense.
I think the problem, though, is, Johnny, is it's too small of a number in terms of, we're not the farming lobby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Tom, the best way to describe it is, can you imagine, right, coming into mayfly season on Coral, right? And like, this is literally what's happened in Norway. You're coming on and you go, right, been 2 weeks into the season. I know that up here, the hatch is going to start next week. And you get a phone call from Inland Fishery to suddenly go, Tom, you're done, the season's over. Forget about it. Like, that's what's happened in Norway. And I would just be concerned that is potentially going to happen down the line in Ireland,
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, because I actually thought of that myself. I was thinking, geez, the guide's there, and I was just thinking, God, can imagine that happened to me.
It's the best comparison.
Fingers crossed.
Mayfly,
Yeah, fingers crossed. I never experienced it, but we're dealing with something that's under a lot of pressure. Yeah. Anybody who's dealing with nature, there's so many changes, so many things happening. And geez, don't know what's down the line.
But I tell
You know?
you one thing, Tom and Johnny, if they tried to do that to Carib and Mask and Sheelan,
It
I
would,
tell you,
yeah.
there'd be riots in the streets, like.
Exactly. No, there would, and that was something that I definitely was kind of over there going, why aren't you on the streets? Why aren't you banging down the doors of local politicians here going, guys, this is our livelihoods you're playing with, Whereas most of them seem to just kind of accept that it had happened and accept that this was going to happen going forward,
Just final points to you, Johnny, and thanks a million for your time.
No problem.
You have to worry now about Norway going forwards, right? Just
You
as
do.
a salmon destination.
100%, 100% are. Like, we have free fishing there for a week next year, for 9 days next year. Most likely, I can't see myself going back. Like, am I going to take the risk of flying all the way over there again to basically be told like that, the river's closed, lads? And it could happen at any night, any day, just suddenly you get a text message saying the river's closed. So it's a huge concern. And there's a lot of Irish anglers that do travel to Norway and, like Sweden, Finland as well,
And you made the point, Johnny. It's like it's hard for us to kind of understand it, but maybe like the comparison to Carib in terms of visiting anglers, the salmon angling industry is actually made up mainly of visiting anglers. Like, so
Exactly.
if you're thinking it, they're all thinking it as well.
Exactly. So look, lads, it's just to finish this. It's not all doom and gloom, because I was coming on here after Sean's positive message of positivity, and I must say, guys, Sean's an absolute gent. I've gotten all my kind of rods through Sean for the last few years, and I was coming on here going, Jesus Christ, I haven't even caught a salmon this year. Like, I'm going to be the harbinger of doom here. But look, by all reports, guys, an interesting one today. I nipped out at lunch for a bit of a bass session just down the beach here, and there was nothing much going on. It was flat, calm, and next thing I just heard this splash. Now, this is kind of like a good bit like in the bay. I'm in the bay, but I'm not in the beach, and I heard this splash, and I was going, what the hell is that? Must be a bass. And I looked, and I kind of got closer, and I was like, geez, that's not a bass. That's quite a big splash. There was a pod of about 30 or 40 salmon jumping and splashing in the sea right in front of me. So yeah, it was great to see. And this is on the Ina River. You had Jane, the Ballymacraven is I can see the Ballymacraven from my back garden here. So this is that river that suffered a catastrophic fish kill last year. So a lot of those fish will go to spawn in the Ballymacraven. But I was talking to the fisheries officer here, and the reports are from down the coast, there's another river that in the bay itself, there's not enough water for the fish to run, but there's pods of fish lining up to run. And the Moy, I know I was on the river at the weekend in my own river that I fish here, and there was stuffed with fish. From most of the places that we're hearing, the run was late this year, but the reports are good. The reports are very, very good. So remember we spoke about the COVID year and the grills returning from the COVID year. Seems they have returned in good numbers, but it's just been a bit late. So a bit of positivity on a...
Yeah, and that is the thing, isn't it? Like, hold the doom and gloom, like maybe from what we're seeing, it, like you said, it is okay. You might have to kind of discount the spring season in the same way the autumn kind of back end is gone, but it might end up being like Norway, where you've got 3 months of salmon fishing.
Look, it could be, and by all accounts, like Galway Weir as well, there was nothing there, and by all accounts, Galway Weir is fishing really well as well.
Yeah, it is.
Just guys, if people, I know there was a couple of lads on to me today that have plans in Norway this year already, and they've obviously been told that thing. If anybody is stuck or needs suggestions, if you still plan on traveling, just give me a shout on Instagram. It's Wild Atlantic Fly Fishing. We know a couple of people over there in the north that'll be able to set you up with a bit of fishing, quite reasonable too, not that expensive. So
spot on. Johnny, thanks a million for joining us.
No hassle, lads. We'll stay in touch. We'll catch up again sometime soon.
Our thanks to Johnny Casey for joining us on the show. Don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.
Continuing our popular Ireland on the Fly Masterclass series, this July we're delighted to be joined by Peter Driver of Piscari-Fly, who will be giving a masterclass on the dry dropper technique for river brown trout.
At the height of the summer, there's no better way to target river trout than with the deadly combination of dry fly and nymph underneath. Whether they're taking on top or subsurface, Peter Driver will be giving invaluable tips and advice.
For river trout anglers, this will be a must-see webinar on Thursday, the 25th of July.
Tickets cost €10 and go to www.irelandonthefly.com/masterclass to register today.